Glenn Rushton, catching up here with FightHype.com. How was your break over the Christmas and New Year?
Good, but short. Okay, as you know, we've got another world title coming up on February 8 in Indiana, so it was very short. We've been training mainly through the Christmas New Year period, but yeah, I'm excited about 2020, looking forward to a terrific year.
Lots happening in Australia domestically, and we'll get to that shortly. A lot of talk back in America right now after Floyd Mayweather sort of posted some stuff online around fighting potentially Khabib and potentially Mcgregor. How would you see that going if Floyd fought Conor McGregor in a rematch?
I'd see it going the same way as the first one. You know, I believe Floyd, you know, his skills are superb. Conor's obviously got a lot of work to do. I've no doubt he'll have learned a lot from his first fight against Floyd, but he's still got a lot of work to do if he's going to match it with Floyd at that level.
Does that rematch, I know Floyd wants to do it, and they probably both want to do it for the money. From a mixed martial arts background like yourself, what would you, like, does it warrant a rematch based off the first one, or does McGregor and his camp have to earn the warrant that they have to go in different?
Well, they've got to go in different for a start, otherwise if nothing changes, nothing changes. So they're going to get the same result. So they've got to change. They've got to look at where they come up short in that fight. We all know Conor's very tough and we know he hits hard. So he's got the basic ingredients there. What he lacks, of course, is boxing skills. And one of the problems in UFC, of course, is because of the legs and so forth, it's a different mindset. In boxing, you focus more on a lot of head movement, a lot of leg movement, gap control, all that sort of stuff. But the gap, everything is different once you throw the legs in and the grappling in and so forth. But Conor's got to put a lot of work in this fight. If he wants to be competitive, he's going to have to put a lot of work into his legs. He's going to have to be a lot more explosive across the gap, a lot more intense in range. And he's going to have to move a lot more because Floyd was able to pick him off fairly comfortably. So his head movement's going to have to improve, his speed across the gap. So his legs are going to need a major overhaul to be competitive with Floyd.
You're a trainer. You've worked in mixed martial arts and trained and fought in mixed martial arts over 32, 35 years, is that right?
Yeah, nearly 4 decades, yeah. A lot of time in martial arts. So
if you were training McGregor or Khabib, who do you reckon would be closer to maybe getting closer or maybe beating Floyd out of those two individuals that Floyd's spoken about?
That's interesting because, of course, we'd have to see how Khabib will adapt to boxing. I don't know that he's ever had a boxing fight, and his grappling skills are sublime. So, you know, you've got to look and see who's the most adaptable. One would think that the more adaptable to boxing would be Conor, because we've all know he's got a dangerous left hand, he's got a great chin, he's an explosive guy. He can get across the gap reasonably quickly, as we saw the other day, you know, when he launched him with his big left hand, which missed, of course, but then he picked him up with the leg. But, you know, so I would be sort of, if it's a purely boxing match, probably with the benefit also of the first hit out, you'd probably say Conor. Mind you, some people might say he's had one crack and he come up fairly short of the mark. Why should he get another shot?
Well, he went nine and a half rounds, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. But I think with some work, Conor McGregor, you know, would have a fairly good chance. I'm not saying Khabib. Khabib is a really, really tough, determined guy. So I'm sure if he applied the same tenacity and development of his boxing skills, I'm sure it'd be competitive because he's a very tough guy.
When you went from mixed martial arts, and for those who don't know, you started off in boxing, you went over to mixed martial arts.
In 1974, yeah.
You studied a hell of a lot of various different arts, didn't you?
Absolutely, yeah. You know, I started out in karate, went to 4th degree black belt, founded my own style and studied every art that everything, you know. So I really did a massive amount of research into every style and form. Some of them are more straight lines, some circular, some more kicks, some more hands. You know, there's so many variations. There's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. So, you know, but ultimately it comes down to science and efficiency and things like that. So you've got to look at, we're working with the same structure and there's only so many ways you can move the human body. You know, we've all got 2 arms, 2 legs and so forth. So you've got to look at the science of it all and the different martial arts and how they accentuate certain aspects is very useful to understanding how you could integrate some of that. And Dan Santo wrote a book once, and as you know, for those that don't know, he was Bruce Lee's #1 student. and he wrote a book called Absorb What Is Useful. A good book, and I actually did a seminar with Dan, at one point in time there, and he was a very competent guy, but I like that concept, absorb what is useful, so he certainly attempted to do that. And I think that's something that boxers can learn a lot from martial arts, and martial arts can learn a lot from boxing. Mm-hmm. And then you start to really look at the body in a slightly different way. And there's things that boxers, like we do things in boxing that most boxers don't do, okay? And they've come from martial arts. So these things are
And you've been
very
successful
important.
from it too.
Absolutely. There's actually flaws that I see in boxing as an art form. And I always say that when you blend science and psychology perfectly, you end up with art. And that's what we're trying to do. The art of boxing is what we're trying to develop here. So yeah, I can see that more and more as UFC and boxing is starting to intertwine, and you've got UFC wanting to promote boxing and so forth, that you'll find more and more of this blending going on, and it's what happened in UFC. As you know, it evolved, and I see the same with boxing.
If a UFC fighter came to you, would you train a UFC fighter? Can you do it?
Oh, absolutely. But I can. But again, you've got to decide where you want to put your attention to, and you can only spend your hours. So it's easier to work. And yes, I do understand all of the grappling side of things as well. But obviously, I'm focused on boxing at this point in time. But I've trained Matt's brother. My assistant. His brother was a world Muay Thai champion, so I trained him through to world Muay Thai title, and now we're training world boxing champions. So yeah, more than happy. As I've often said to people, you tell me the rules, and I'll train someone to beat you.
And be successful with it, obviously.
Be successful
with Jeff, and obviously the likes of Dallas.
Make the rules. I can train you to beat anyone with those rules.
Some other feedback we had the other day was around potentially Mcgregor fighting Pacquiao, and obviously these guys like the likes of Floyd, Manny Pacquiao, they're late in their career. They probably don't want the hard fights. They've already been there and done it. Obviously it's a money situation, I mean, if you can make more money with an easier opponent, why not do it? Floyd and Manny, who wins the fight quicker? Because you faced Manny.
Floyd or Manny versus Conor McGregor. Yeah. I think actually Manny Pacquiao. When Manny knows he's got you, he goes in for the kill. You saw how he put Thurman down pretty quickly. He's very explosive. It would be an interesting thing because Conor's quite explosive from the get-go. But as you know, Manny is he's got good defence. He's very mobile, very explosive. He can beat you with short combo, but he can also totally destroy someone with a long combo, a long flurry. And if he starts to pick you off, which I have no doubt he would do against Conor, Manny would be picking Conor off, and he would quickly seize the moment when he landed one of those single shots or a short combo, and he would just go in for the kill with one of those devastating long combos that we know Manny, just when he cuts loose and he knows he's got you, he's ruthless, absolutely ruthless. Whereas Floyd, as we know, is a real artist. He will just break you down methodically, and he'll just put you away when he's ready in his own good time, no hurry. And we saw that in the first fight with Conor McGregor, that Floyd was very patient in that fight, but once he eventually pushed the button, he did. So in my belief, Manny would get the job done faster, but who's to know? I mean, I'd love to see Conor develop his boxing skills because they were.
Does he have to, getting away from Kavanaugh and his trainers in the UFC, does he have to maybe go and spend some? So Tyson Fury recently has just split with Ben Davison for this for this fight against Wilder.
Yep.
Would his team have to maybe go and get some boxing, background?
Yeah, I'm not sure what Kavanagh's sort of boxing background skill set is there, but all I can do is look at Conor and realise that yes, there's some definite shortcomings. If I was teaching Conor, for example, there's a lot of things I would work on that definitely need work if he's going to be competitive against someone like Manny or Floyd. There is definite boxing skills that need to be developed.
What did you find hard, Glenn, with your young, and you've trained some champions here at the House of Dreams, Stratton Boxing Club. What did you find hard going from that into boxing? I know you just said about the rules, but was it drumming in certain techniques and ways, or how did you find that?
Going from martial arts to boxing?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, martial artists for a start tend to be easier to hit. The head movement is generally not so good. The gap is all different, you know, because the gap with boxing is different to the gap in a UFC fight because you don't have legs and so forth. So it's a different gap control. There's different solutions, you know. So there's a lot of groundwork that's got to be done. If you look at boxers, the stances tend to be wider. They sit down more in their stance. There's a lot of things that you've got to tweak and fix if you're going to transition. Some people do it well, some just never do it. But there is a lot of work to be done. You know, there's a fairly big difference to be competitive, you know, at the top class level, and there's a lot of work to be done to transition from a UFC to a boxing level.